quick transition. Hello, we are live. We're coming to you live from Milwaukee. I feel like it's been a while since we've done one of these, so we're excited to get back here and do some more Power BI user groups. We have some great announcements today. We're going to go through some of those, and yeah, let's get into it. Let's start having a Power BI user group. This user group will be for I'm going to do a presentation around working with enterprise grade templates, doing Power BI files that'll help you build efficient processes inside your organization. So this will probably address some of your adoption framework areas or questions if you're trying to roll out Power BI inside your org. So let me transition over here to our slide deck. And
that was a fantastic intro. You should have just kept going with it. Live from Milwaukee.
Live from Milwaukee.
Power BI user group. So Mike and
well, we're getting there. Trying to figure out all the things. So we got that up. Right? Yes.
in alongside that, right, Mike? Something like that.
For sure. All right. So I'm going to do a quick audio check before we really get into the slide. I was pressing some buttons, things were happening. Can I get an audio check from everyone? Nicole says hi. Jordan says hello. Fernando says hello as well. Thank you guys for joining. Can you guys give me a thumbs up and let me know if you can hear the audio? Let's do a quick audio check. I'll give it a moment here. And Seth, go ahead and do a little hello again, and we'll make sure that you can hear them too.
Just in case that the audio can't be heard.
Yes, exactly. This is, you know, we're like thousands of dollars deep in audio issues now, and so it's getting fixed. Good audio. Okay, Nicole says we got good audio. All right, we'll move on.
Talk, Seth, because you might be on mute and nobody cares what you say anyway, which is fine, right?
They just see us laughing here and having a good time, so that's good for video.
Right. Like it sounds like what you guys are saying is fantastic, but Mike, smooth sailing so far. Congratulations. Outside of the fact that you have our previous guest Melissa Coates as my name on the screen, that's okay. I love Melissa Coates, and any kudos we could give to the SQL chick. That's not me though. we
fixing.
We kudo, right? So
real-time changes. It's Seth Seebauer, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you think that's your name? Awesome.
So I don't know if we want to pop into intro deck and get things rolling.
Let's rock and roll.
I think what obviously is pretty apparent on the first one is a little bit of a design change. We're kind of adapting as Power BI and
It did? All right, let's try this one. Hold on. Clicking a different one. Clicking a different button.
Just lost Seth when the screen was switched to slides. Can we hear Seth again? Now your thumbs up went to thumbs down.
Yeah, right. Again.
So what I want to say is next month we'll dive a lot more into kind of where the user group is headed, but same old from Power BI Milwaukee, Brew City, PUG not going away or anything like that. Monthly meetings, we're just trying to broaden the horizons and offer more to a wider audience throughout the entire Power Platform. So this is kind of where the new logo fits in, and I look forward to hear more about that next month when we have some more details around that. In terms of tonight, Mike, if you want to go through next slide, we follow the same. Fernando says, "You're back, Seth." You betcha, Fernando. We're back. You're probably talking audio, but it feels good. It feels good to be back after a little break. So we'll run through a few of the events and things that everybody should be aware of. But if you're new to Power BI and um, don't quite know where to get some of that information, we'll walk through those. We have the presenter already on the phone and talking tonight. It's Mike. There you
I'm
go.
also Matt.
That's
I'll
for
go
the
by
SQL
Matt.
chick. That's for the SQL chick thing. And then we finish off with a happy hour. So we hope that you guys can join us afterwards, where Mike and I will hang out along with anybody else who's on the user group right now. We love chatting about Power BI, talking about anything that was brought up in the presentation where we may not have caught the question in the chat. So we hope you guys will stick around with us afterwards. So kicking off into kind of some of the upcoming events, more developer focused. MS Ignite is not too far away. It's very nearby in March 2nd through the 4th. Do you know, Mike, is that a free event this
It
year? Because
is.
it's all
I
online?
did sign up for it.
Okay.
I subscribed so I could at least listen to some of the sessions that are going on. There's a ton of content going on. I'm guessing they're going to do something very similar to what they did previously, where they will do the live sessions and stream a lot of video. I think they're actually recording a lot of video beforehand. Therefore, they're just going to get like a lot of recordings of people and what they've done. But they usually host all of that now on like open social media channels, so you can go listen to it after the fact. So it's going to be a good event, I think. There are a couple sessions I'm interested in picking up.
Yeah, more of a heavier developer focused
Yes.
conference, right? But they do a lot of announcements about Power BI.
Yes. Yep.
There's yeah, there I'm pretty sure there's going to be some big announcements there, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yes, there is.
Um,
This is the little Ignite site that they've got
the
going on.
nice. Um, if you're not aware, for some of the newbies, one website you should be absolutely just dialed into every single day is community.powerbi.com. And that is the Microsoft forum where you basically can get any question that you may have answered by the super users and anybody else. Just a fantastic forum that I've been a part of since the beginning. And know that a lot of people, even in the chat, are big contributors over there. But one section in there that is very useful is the events section. So under the community area on the heading up on top, you can click on there and be taken to any of the current events that are kind of near term. So there's a lot of kind of third party or organizations. Blue Granite does a lot of free things that are posted in there right now. And I think
Looking
if you
for
go in the
events. Upcoming events? Is this the one you're looking
yeah,
for?
there's
There's
one.
another link
Yeah,
somewhere.
current
Yeah.
event. Yeah, so this one basically you can scroll through here and a lot of these, or the vast majority, are all free. So if you're interested in a dashboard in a day, or you hear about people who don't really know how to use Power BI, like this is a for sure a place you want to check out because a lot of free stuff is happening all the time here. And I was gonna roll with the Seth is on top of the game and releasing event information, but I cheated a little bit when I was out here on the community because 33 minutes prior to me being out there, the very last event posted is the one we'll talk about, which is there's an event for the business applications. James Phillips does his full yearly State of the Union and kind of event roadmap. There's a separate link in that in the deck, Mike. Otherwise, way at the bottom of the events page on the community, you'll find a link to there too. But that's a free event as well, and I highly recommend that one. I think last year it was a half a day, maybe it was a full day. It was a good chunk of time where James goes through the full State of the Union of of Dynamics 365, Power Platform, Power BI, talks a lot about the roadmap of what's coming up. So if you're interested in like directionally where they're going, it's a fantastic event to sign up for.
Cool. I was going to try and bring up not the blog. I was trying to find where that community MBAS for 2021 was. I didn't see it yet. So it's somewhere on the community page. I couldn't quite find it right there to bring it onto a
And
link.
this is why it's the business applications launch
Event,
event.
I guess.
Yeah.
Should Google that one.
Maybe they're still holding out. Like maybe we can do an in person or something.
Exactly. So tonight we're going to talk about specifically, we're going to do enterprise. Let's see if I can get this correct. And let's see if I can transition properly. Sweet. Still checking. Okay, audio looks good. Um, Tonight we're doing just enterprise templates. I have done a presentation for a couple user groups and on some other web YouTube channels where we just talk about kind of what does it take to make an enterprise grade template? What kind of things do you put in there? And then this really actually plays very well with driving adoption of Power BI in your organization. So I'll just kind of give you some tips and tricks. Seth and I have spent a ton of time thinking through this, building this out for his organization, really trying to get into like we have a team of people. We have multiple reports that are going to client facing areas where we're building reports that are external facing. So all those reports need to have a similar look and feel and need to have a consistent experience. So we're really starting to talk about how do you make that happen? How do you get all of these reports to be in a conformed way and you reduce the amount of work? Yes, you can click all the buttons and all the menu options, but it's ripe for errors. It's going to make a lot of issues, and everything won't be exactly right. Sorry, Seth, you're going to say something? Oh, okay. I thought gotcha. Sorry. So we're good there. Let me go to the next. Let's go back to the next one here. So any more slides. After that, we're going to jump right into happy hour. So we'll send out a link to the Teams meeting to the end of the in the chat window, and in there will be you can just click the Teams meeting link. It'll then take you over to a Teams meeting that we'll be in, and then we just kind of hang out and talk for about an hour or so. So we'll get into that in just a moment. So let me go back over to my Power BI file. And let's just auto hide the taskbar because I don't think you need that up if we don't, oops, not that button. Let's go settings real quick and just hide it. Lock the taskbar, automatically hide. There we go. We'll see how Power BI desktop, how happy we'll be. Okay, so you already know who I am. I'm going to get into it. We'll move right along here to slide number one. So let's talk about kind of like Power BI, templating things, and this Power BI file that we have here is kind of an example of some practices we're going to do. There's actually a couple tips and tricks that we're going to build and show you how they're built inside this template, so you can kind of get an observation and to see like what are some of the key components that we put into these reports and what they are. So when we look at the adoption framework, you can Google this. There's a bunch of YouTube videos around the adoption framework. This is kind of the key areas around what adoption framework looks like for an entire organization. You have like governance, service management, going to PowerBI.com. There's security on top of this, like your data, who can access it, workspaces, a lot of things that are around how do you access data and get in and out of that information as well. And then there's other parts of the adoption framework, like how do you support a rollout? I have a single team that knows how to do Power BI, but I want all my teams in my company to leverage Power BI in a more efficient way. And then how do we drive more adoption? So we have one or two experts who know how to do Power BI in a team, but how do we help drive adoption across all the members of that team? Where can we remove friction and points of a friction for the team? So when we look at what I'm going to address tonight, I'm not really going to talk about any of the governance, service management, or security things. The Power BI templates piece is really focusing on how do we drive better adoption and how do we support rolling out of Power BI across our organization. So again, one of the primary examples of why this is important is we're going to set up patterns, we're going to set up standards inside a single Power BI file that becomes a guideline or a mark that which we can hold all the other developers of reports to help us make consistent looking reports moving forward. And so I'm just going to keep a tab here on the comments. And I know Seth, you're watching the comments, so I'll just kind of let you stop me if there's any quick questions that we can answer directly through this. Sure, sounds good. Excellent. So so when we're talking about the templates, here's kind of the two broken out data points, right? We're talking about like what does adoption look like? What are the key buttons that we're going to be looking at here from an adoption standpoint? And then what does rolling out look like and how does that kind of play into what we're talking about for these templates? So I feel like the adoption piece of this is really around end user training. Again, when we're building these templates, especially with what Seth and I have been working on, these reports are complex. They're more they're less like a report and they're more like what I would call a data application. You're really building a full UI UX experience. There's extra buttons and there's how reports are swapping out visuals from a bar chart to a line chart. There's a lot of complicated mechanics that are happening inside the report. So someone is discovering how to build a look and feel of that report. And then once you have that, how do I let my other users of my team learn, use, get up to speed so that way we can build consistent looking reports. So that's one of the areas of adoption that we're going to talk about. Another area of adoption, which is not necessarily with templates, but I think it kind of relates, is a center of excellence or community of practice. I was working with a company that they didn't want to call it a center of excellence; it was kind of a community of practice. Kind of how you view those two different areas. The center of excellence is more, I feel like I would describe it as this is a governed body of people, one or two individuals that may be paid from the IT organization that's running the center of excellence. They're deciding what standards are happening and helping solve challenging problems across the organization. Uh, Other people call it a community of practice, where there's really no centralized leader for that group. It's kind of just a bunch of teams working together for a common area or common good. So the Center of Excellence, I think, is a really good point to talk about adoption. How do you support your internal team needs? And what does that look like when you start the project with Power BI? And how does that change over time? So you start typically with a large engagement from either a business team or an IT team where you're doing like 90% of the work and you're kind of just doling out reports from there. But as the maturity of Power BI develops within your organization, you want to start seeing less IT involvement or less of the data team involved, and more of that being able to be handled by self-service BI inside the various business units, right? Models are getting created, people are consuming from those models, there are patterns in how we consume data from models and build reports. All that kind of comes from governance that comes out of the center of excellence. The next point we want to talk about is like onboarding and training. So onboarding and training is really around bringing those new report developers. And I think I might have misspoke there. I think I said end user training. That's the people who are using the report, right? How do we get them comfortable with what you're building inside the report? Again, there's a lot of techniques we can use to show that, but how do we illustrate that in our reports and make it consistent across all reports we're building? Moving over to supporting rollout, common data governance, we're going to touch on that a little bit. So this is where we start talking essentially security standards as well. There is row level security used in these reports. How do we set that up? Is there a standard pattern that we're going to use? Who's deciding what the pattern is? And are we testing that to make sure that it's going to be performant across all the reports that we have? So the template or the Power BI template file that you build, you may actually pre-populate some data tables into that report, save it to like a common location, SharePoint maybe per se, and then from there people can download that as a starting point so that the data has already been loaded. We have some row level security things applied and it's already set up for what you need. And then all you're doing is giving people like that starting point. So you don't have to worry about making sure that it's consistent. It's already there and ready to go. And then supporting team rollouts. For this one, we don't templates are a good idea for team rollouts because again, you're having like this, a standard on how we're going to build reports. When you have a standard or have a report that kind of is the example of how things are working, it does aid other teams when you give them that file. Hey, go to this file, download it. Here's how we're doing row level security. Here's the examples we're doing for buttons or features that we're adding into our reports. And then other teams can get up to speed quicker around using Power BI in their reporting for their needs. Okay, so I'm going to break the templating down into kind of two key areas. We're going to talk about first Power Query and what can we do from a template standpoint at the Power Query level, the data ingestions phase. And then what are we going to do in the templating for visualizations? Because there's definitely two areas of this. The row level security pieces is more modeling side, so we'll see it on the visualizations. However, we can load a set of standard tables that we need in every model to support the row level security. And that's what's handled in the Power Query section. So let's go over to the next slide here. So here's some examples of some things that we're going to want to set up, right? So in Power Query, we're going to want to preload all of our common tables. So for this one, we have like there's potentially a data source, right? If we have like a SQL server that we're going to connect to, that would probably be advisable to set it up with a parameter. So you would want to build a parameter that has the specific information for the location of data. So in this example here, we have a manage parameters where we're actually going into Power Query and we are showing, hey, this is the data source. This is my, again, I'm using an OData feed for AdventureWorks, but here's where my AdventureWorks data sits. This is a parameter that can be used on every single table and every subsequent table as we load information. So I have a single point of contact to, if we're moving reports from dev, QA, prod, this parameter can then be updated with data, the pipelines, deployment pipelines in PowerBI.com, so we can then move this report between different stages of development. So again, one of the things you'll set up is these parameters. Another parameter you'll see here that I have listed in the bottom section here. Let me put my zoom it on so we can see that. Ooh, okay. We also have another section here called environment. So the environment area is really where we can change or be creative about how we load our data. So again, Seth's in my example, we have like a bunch of SQL queries that are supporting some reports. In those SQL queries, we have a view. So there's a production view and there's like a QA view. So even though the query or the connection to the data source engine is the same, we have an appending at the end of the environment. So we actually can build some if-then logic inside Power Query that says, hey, if this environment is set to production, use the view that is production. If this environment is set up to be QA, we can actually append a little bit of text onto that view name, and then the report would automatically update and say, hey, this environment will be pointing at the QA view. So we could have a limited set of data. It makes my data model smaller, and the environment gives me some flexibility there to be able to, again, move between different parameters or different views of information and data that we have. Um, Another thing that we're going to do inside Power Query is going to work really hard to get the row level security set up. So if there are tables or tables of information that we need to pre-populate, again, set those up beforehand, get them preloaded, and just have them living inside the Power BI file. So that way, the next person who consumes it just picks it up and the data is already there. And the row level security, is at least initially built correctly. It may get modified because you can't lock that down, but at least you have the starting point for what the row level security should look like. This is another area. So I pointed out here or alluded to the environment being a factor here. So when we're doing really large data sets, so let's say we're talking about tables that have hundreds of millions of rows in them. On a Power BI desktop, you may not want to load all 100 million rows of data. A couple months of data may be sufficient. So in Power Query, you can then make, again, using parameters, you can make additional properties in here that will allow you to filter or unfilter data based on some parameters that you're making. Again, another useful technique here to kind of chop down the full data set. So we're using a minimal data set during development on desktop, and then we can open that up and make it larger for everyone. Okay, looks like there's no questions. Okay, we're good. Um, And then lastly, we talked about the parameters pieces. So here's some good, areas where you'd want to use that. So let's just jump in here real quick. And actually, I'm a big fan of just doing things and showing you how they work. So I'm pretty sure I have some Power Query attached to this. So I'll do the transform data here. And when we get into transform data, you'll see I have some environment development areas here and some table names or products. So let's go through here and let's just enhance some of these. So I'm going to go to a table called product catalog. So product catalog is where we're starting from. And then if we go over to the applied steps on the right-hand side under source, I'm going to click on the very first step here, which will take me all the way back to where my original data source came from. So here's my OData feed. This is where the original data set came from, but I want to parameterize this. So we need to make a parameter to then take out the text of that and save that somewhere and then use that as part of my parameter properties. So I will go in here and click the Manage Parameters, which is the button here on the home ribbon called Manage Parameters. Clicking on this button will open up a dialog box, and you see that I already have a parameter in here for the environment. So this is, we can use this for like dev or prod, a list of values. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go use the full OData feed. We're going to take this and make this a full parameter as far as like a data source. So some techniques I like to use there. I'll click New. I'll change the parameter name to data source. You can add a description if you want. And then under the area here under type, you can make it just a text field, and you can make a list of values. So if you want to have a drop-down list, you can. For now, for this one, I'll just make it any value, and I do need to have a value in there to start. So I'm just going to put test in there for now. I'll click OK. And what I will do here is I'm going to go back up to my data catalog, and I forgot to copy the value. So I'm going to copy out this text string here. So I'm going to copy the full HTTPS request. I'm going to go back into managing my parameters, go into my data source one, and then for the current value, I'll just paste it in there. So now I've got my full parameter as an input in my parameters area. Clicking OK will now update my parameter. Oops, that's a little bit zoomed out funny. Clicking that will now let me see the full, that is my data source. So now this is a value I can detect and pull in later somewhere else in my Power Query. So going back into product catalog, I'll go up to the step called source again. So we're going to go back up to source here. And now I'm going to modify that step. And we will now change this to not be the OData feed. We'll then adjust this to be in the middle here. So we're just going to take this out and swap it. A trick that I like to use, particularly with this now, is I like to use parameters with no spaces or underscores or a single name. It seems to make it a little bit easier to type because if you have spaces in there, it adds some different syntax. So now I can just say data source. Okay. And there's a little block here that designates that this is the data source property that I'm using as an input from my parameters. Anything with the dot at the end of it, these are other things that have the word data source in them. However, the dot denotes that this is a function from Power Query or the M language and not just a parameter. So I'm going to go back here and type data source again. I'm going to hit tab to accept it. And then assuming that I did everything correctly, it'll then reload the data from the source. So this makes a lot of sense, especially when you're loading multiple tables with the same information or the same initial connection string. So if I have, let's just duplicate this now. If I duplicate my step here, I now have another product data table. And let's just say I was picking something else different, right? Let's just, for kicks and giggles, let's pick company sales. Let's try that one. So if I wanted to do some different transformations, I can remove these other steps. I can now pick company sales, and now my source is still the same source for both tables, and now I'm referencing that in both those prior queries. So now I can get a totally different table of information, and I think this was called company sales. So let's rename it. Control A in the name, and then call it company sales. And because I don't want it loading a bunch of data and taking forever, I will take the top rows here. Let's just keep the top 10 rows here for now. And again, this is also parameterizable. Parameterizable? I guess you could say it that way. This is something else you can see here. This is where we can add another parameter here from parameters that we may want to add into the Power Query. So if you want to adjust this number with a parameter, you can also do that as well. But for now, I'm just going to say take the top 10. There we go. Okay. And there we go. Now we have company sales in our list of information. And then for both of these, we now have the same data source. So when we go back to PowerBI.com, if we're using deployment pipelines and we want to change that data source between different environments, we have one change we make inside the parameter, and that then allows you to then move that through those deployment pipelines. I'm going to also show you the example here around using dev. This will break the table, but I'll just show you what I mean by in concept here. So I had talked about like there's this concept of maybe we have a dev and production variable here. So we have a value that could be dev or production. So if I do a new, how did I do this before? I think I just did a new blank query. And I'm going to go into, hopefully, see if I can write this all from memory here. If environment equals dev, I think it's all lowercase, then I'll make the output of this to be some text. So I'll underscore dev. and then else. I'm pretty sure I can just leave it blank. So I'll just do two quotes and see if it hit enter. And now it's converted to a table. I actually wanted to write the M language. Advanced editor. Ah, see, it made the whole thing an if statement. Maybe I did this in a parameter before. I can't remember exactly how I did it before. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this demo. Let's see if I can futz it here. I don't know if M will be happy here. I'm pretty sure Steve Campbell, who I believe is on the line as well, is rolling over on his chair right now going, no, don't do it that way. Yeah, it's not going to like that. Okay. I'll have to go see if I can get a different example. I'll try and pull together a file where I actually have using the if-else statement. But essentially what you could do, if I was able to write the if function correctly, you can actually append on the end of this another parameter or another option at the end that says, hey, I have done some additional information, I've done some insights on how to make this query work, and you can append at the end of this using the and sign, and you can add another variable on the end. So this could be where we would add the environment at the end here. And so this will break it because it's going to take the data source and then append to that some other information. So in SQL, if you're using the SQL view, you can then make the root part of the view the main production version, and then you can add or concatenate on the end of that any additional information you want to say, I'm going to repoint to a different view based on that name of that view that you're going to use. I hope Alex Powers is on. Usually, I think he said he was going to maybe make it here because he would also roll over and cry because of all my poor M that I've written. So I'll delete this table because it's totally not working now. And then I'll close and apply it. So we'll come back to the main one. So that's kind of the example of just being able to use data sets and incorporating environments inside your report so you can kind of move around and move through the data as well. I'm going to say cancel for now. I don't know how long this is going to take it to go grab the product catalog information. And then I'm going to discard the changes, hopefully. Because I can't advance the slide because I'm in Power BI. Go figure. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Hey, it's PowerPoint for data. You know, I'm trying to do the whole thing. PowerPoint and data all together. There it goes. Discard changes. Discard. Okay, get rid of that stuff. So that's kind of the core of what's happening at the template level. Let's move over to more of, so we can go into visualizations. I think I get to the next point here in a little bit. So I wanted to talk about row level security, and I think I have another slide for that that's coming up. So let's just keep moving on with this one. So these are some common, well, let's call these a little bit more advanced on the visualization side that we want to leverage these over and over again. So the visualization steps we have here, like let's say we wanted to add a tooltip to a page or have a specific tooltip formatted in a way that we can reuse it. So in this one, I have kind of what Microsoft provides us some good guidelines, or some of their designers. When you have a tooltip, make the tooltip dark and have light text when your report is lighter, because it makes the tooltip stand out. Another really interesting trick here is you can actually use an animated GIF or GIF, I don't know how you want to say it. You can actually use an animation to show people how to interact with your report. This takes a lot more work to set up. So in the template files, it's probably a good idea to show people or explain how to do the process to make these GIFs or animated features of the report. So once people can understand how it's built, they can then go build their own animations or information around that as well. Definitely want to add information buttons. One of the things that we have found is the information button that comes by default with the Power BI visual is not very discoverable. And sometimes we need a much clearer designation of what's happening on the page. Like how do I know what the information about this visual is? So we may actually add intentionally bigger buttons that are linked right on the report and show them per report or per visual, hey, here's what this thing's doing. So again, this is a function that you really want to spend time thinking about what's the end user going to look like, how are they going to consume the report, and helping them understand what you're doing. One caveat as I talk about visualization here is I've done a lot of work working with a visualization team or a UI UX team. And when you hand a UI UX team an open canvas, they'll draw very beautiful things and it'll be awesome and it'll look really, really sharp and good. But when you try and take someone who's not familiar with Power BI and overlay the framework that is Power BI on top of what they're trying to build you, right? The pretty bar chart with all the kinds of numbers or whatever they want, or can we make this different kinds of fonts? There's a framework where we have to work within, and I think there's a really big need here from us, the developers, the reports, is to really share here's what's physically possible with this tool. Don't go build me something that's crazy ridiculous. Like I can't build a map with all these crazy icons on it. It's too much work. There's too much additional needed requirements to get to that state, right? So I'm not going to build a custom visual for every single thing you want. On the flip side, if you want a fast report to be developed, let's stay within these bounded box. Like, here's how a visual will look. Here's what a bar chart looks like. And so I think a lot of these techniques we're showing you here from a visualization standpoint is you want to spend time putting in the work to show people what types of visualizations are possible. Because then when you have that conversation with the UI UX team, you can say, here's what we can do. This is what a tooltip will look like. This is how we can do an animation explaining what to click on. Here's how we do switching between different visuals. Because that starts framing out like, okay, we're in a framework, we're explaining how it works, and can then share that externally. And I think it'll help you get to your final answer quicker. They won't be asking for things you just simply can't build. So again, it's probably like a really edge case maybe situation there. But again, I don't know how many people are actually working with um, uh, a UX team to help build these things.
Something that worked really well in communicating with that group in particular is that framework concept, right? Like it kind of takes them. We can obviously do quite a bit in terms of custom visualization or building layers on different things, but how UI UX typically thinks about applications and what can be built, um, sky's the limit.
Yes,
Whereas in our context, you enforcing that type of framework and things work in this way without getting into the nitty gritty of like, no, the filter context just won't work within, using this
correct.
measure with that. And they're just like, what are you talking about? Like, I just want to see this data in
Sure.
this
Yeah,
way,
exactly.
and,
Formatting
and that's a very
tables
simplified
is a great
way of
example.
bringing that. Yep.
You think
Yep.
about tables like there's so many ways we can format them, but still we have a limited amount of options. And so that's probably the visual that has been the most challenging, frankly, from a UX standpoint, is they want this amazing looking table with blowouts and drop down menus and like all kinds of stuff in the table, and our framework does not let us do that. So again, having like a clean example of like this is a table, this is a matrix, this is how we make the different line levels, expand out. Those are
Yeah.
really good data points to kind of
And
present to the UX team. Say, this is the framework we're working in. Build within this, and we can make you happy. If you go too far with the
and
reservation, you can't do it.
and it simplifies that conversation of, are you in the box where this is, a very easy thing to implement, or are you outside the box and you just stepped
Yes,
into a realm of like, we can probably do this, but it's going to take a lot more time to do it, right?
true.
And those make those conversations a lot easier. Is like, oh well, I don't really need that if it's going to be 2 weeks as opposed to two
That's
hours,
that's
right?
a really that's a really good point. I feel like everything is possible. You can build it all, and they can
Mm-hmm.
come. You can come with anything
Sure.
you want, but it's a matter of, is it off the shelf framework, or are we building a custom visual? So do you want a couple clicks of a button in a couple hours, or do you want 2 weeks of development to build everything from scratch? And I think that's a good point to note, because yes, you can get it that way. How important is it for you to have it, and does it need to be right now? Because then you can, I mean, if you want a custom table, it's all D3.js on the back end. It's all open sourced stuff to begin with. You can build whatever you need. How long do you really want to take to do that? So I think that's a really good point. Okay, let's see if we can get back to the screen. Push this. All right, cool. Um, Moving on to slide. So I do want to break away from the slides. I want to actually do demos of this. So people may be saying, what's an animated GIF on a page? So um, like Steve says, like the peanut butter. Apparently you don't get that over in Europe, or I don't know. Is that like an American only GIF or GIF? Peanut butter is like an American only thing, kind of. So GIF, all of them, right? All the things. So here's just a regular tooltip. So to make a tooltip show up on a visual, you would click on the visual. I'll open up the visualizations panel here, and then under the settings of it, you have a tooltip option here on the very far in this menu, like way buried down here. And so let me just go here to tooltip. So these are the tooltips that we have. So you go to the tooltip option, turn it on. You're going to go grab a report page and then make it what is the name of the page. So I have a page named tooltip 1. So go down to the bottom here. You'll see I have a page at the very bottom of my screen named tooltip number 1. If I go there, you'll see there's a very small visual that's there, and I have some text that's on that visual. So, I may not have any data. I just may have a text box illustrating in my template, right? Here's the tooltip. This is the standard we're going to use. We're going to have a header like this. We're going to have a text body like that. It's going to have a color like this. So you set up these properties beforehand in the template, and so now we have an example of what a tooltip will look like. So anywhere we apply this, we could apply this same format, copy the page, and now we have a tooltip that matches the same style and formatting. So by going back over to the report on the overview page, now that I've modified the tooltip, it's now just showing you, hey, this is just the text of the tooltip. So let's talk about the other kind of tooltip. Let's say there's maybe some features here, right? If I right click on this data bar, I have this option to drill through. So that means I can drill through using mountain bikes into the property called yellow. So I cut that off a little too low. Oops, and now I dropped that other half. Third time's the charm. So I can say for mountain bikes, drill through is going to the page called yellow, the yellow page. So that's a feature I want to be discoverable to the end users, but they may not understand there's like a couple clicks and some things to get through to that information. So what I can do is I can also add another tooltip. So this is a separate page that's another tooltip, and I'm actually animating the right click. I have a little text box there that says, hey, right click on a bar to drill through to a different page to see more details. And then I have my little cursor going over. You can see me clicking and then going down and then highlighting the yellow tab so I can go to a different page. So let's show you how to do this. So this is another tooltip I have here, and I'll build another one from scratch. This is the tooltip, and I'll make it view, page view. We'll do the actual size. So this is the size of the whole page. And what this is, there's nothing on here other than a text box. So there is actually, let me pull up the view ribbon and put on the selection panel so you can see that. There's two items on here. There's a shape and there's a text box. The shape is really nothing. So if the shape is this little colored box around the perimeter, that kind of makes it look like a tooltip. So I put that shape on top of this. The text box, or the text box here, is just a simple plain text box on the front there. And so the GIF, or the animated image, is actually on the page background. So if I go to page background, you'll see here I have a background item. That is the GIF. So animation only happens when it's a background image, like a PNG, or actually PNG don't animate, but like the background is the only thing that will show you the animation of what's going on. So by making that background image my GIF, then it automates all the things together. So now if I go, let's just make a quick new one here. I'm gonna go to the page size. Okay, so 580 by 500. So I'm gonna make a new page here. We're gonna do it from scratch. New page. I'm going to make this page a tooltip by going to the page information. We're going to rename it, and then we're going to turn on the option called tooltip. So this tells Power BI that this is a tooltip page. I'm going to show this when I'm hovering over some data points. So we're going to say this is going to be tooltip demo. And now that we have this, I can now adjust the page size. Microsoft gives you a helper. You don't have to use tooltip So tooltip is a recommended size for a tooltip. It's just a suggestion. So you don't have to use this. If you click it, you'll see that the page size goes to 320 by 420, or sorry, 320 by 240. And then if I go into the view again and go to view page by actual size, you can see the page actually shrank down. This is a really small page. So now if I click on tooltip again, I'm going to go to custom, and I think my numbers was 580 by 500. 500. So this is the actual size of my animated GIF. So I've already recorded the GIF, and I did that with another program called Screen to GIF or GIF. So that's just basically taking a little windowed section of my page and just showing you the animation. So once you've recorded that, assuming I still have my image here, page background, I'm going to add an image. There's my drill through. I'm going to open that, and boom. So now I have the animation applied to my background. You'll notice right away, build visuals with your data. That thing still lives on top of my page. I don't have any visuals on it. So I'm going to add a shape to this really quick. I'm going to go to Insert, Shapes. I'm going to just drop a rectangle on the page. So there's my little rectangle. I will then maximize him so he's the full page width of the page. And then the fill, I'll turn off. And now I have a nice little perimeter around the outside edge. So if I click on the line, I can then adjust this line, make it bigger. We can round the edges if you want to make it whatever you want. And now we have this new tooltip. So if we go back over to the overview page, we can now add that tooltip to the question mark. So you may not have seen this. This is a newer feature where we have the question mark up here at the very top. I don't know, is this, nope, the wrong one. Is it shift? Oh, yeah, there. That's the thing I'm looking at. So that's the little question mark. So how do you turn that on, right? So that's another feature I'm showing you here. So this is actually not easy to find. You actually get a new option down here at the very bottom called Visual Header Tooltip, but by default, this option is not turned on. You actually have to go into the section called Visual Header here. So this is the area you go into, the Visual Header. Open that up, and you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and by default, Visual Header Tooltip icon is off. So this will typically be off on all your visuals. So let me see if I can show you this on a different visual. I'll go, actually that one already has it on. This one does not. So if I click on this bar chart, I go into the visual header here, and if I minimize this section, there is no, I'm missing my additional section. So if I open visual header, scroll all the way to the bottom, there's my additional option. And only when I check this on, does it turn on the other feature. So turning this on, minimizing this section, and now you'll see at the very bottom, there's a visual header tooltip at the bottom. So the UI isn't great on this. It's a little tricky to figure out how to get to it, but it's there. And now that I have the visual header tooltip here, I can then go here and say, what is my report page? So I'm going to use my report page tooltip demo. Click on that one. And if you want text on there, you can add it. And then now when I hover this one, you'll see my animated GIF shows back up again and starts animating again for me. So that's how you build those animation things. Ooh, I will take a question right now. Is there a way to set the font of all visuals? Yes. And to do that will be in my last slide, so we will get to it. Thanks, Seth. Themes.PowerBI.Tips will be your answer for that one. So I'll demo that a little bit later on. Okay, moving back over to our slides. Let's see here. We're on slide 6. Yeah, 7. Okay. Slide 7. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about the pain that is formatting tables. Tables are quite a pain to format. There are a lot of things going on in there. So you can stylize or build out the style of your tables in the template file. So this is where I recommend building a minimum of a table and a matrix. You can put a little bit of dummy data in there if you want. If you have some that you have in the report that you've already preloaded for the template, do it, add it in there. But that information that's there will help you build out what that table design will look like. Now, the great part about this is once you have a table design, I can copy and paste this between pages of reports or between reports. So as long as I have an example of what's built, we can tweak it and change it. Another option that I think is really good to help pre-build is a list of text boxes. 2 or 3 is probably probably fine, but that's where you say, this is what header text looks like. Here's what the body would look like. Here's what a title would look like. So we kind of define like in these text boxes, is it centered left? Is it centered middle? Is the font size a certain height? What's the height of that box? So that way when we're building our reports, we can basically go back to our template page, copy and paste these visuals back and forth, and now we get a bunch of stylized options that are all the same on all your visuals on all your pages. So let's show you that one next. So let's go over here to pre-formatting our tables. So on the left-hand side, I've got a table that's formatted this way. Oops. Table design number one, this may be like one of my design tables, and table design two here is maybe a different design that I want to apply. So just for kicks and giggles here, I'm going to remove this table, and I'm just going to arbitrarily grab some columns and put them on the table here on the canvas. So I'm going to go grab, let's go grab product name, and then I'll just grab a weight. Okay, so by default, this is my default temp table. We can stylize it here in the desktop, so we can actually do the changes to these visuals here locally, or we can adjust the theme file if you really want to get into corporate templates. That's like a whole nother level above this, where you can define any property that lives in the visualizations pane. These are all definable by how we do that across the entire visual and potentially the entire report. So there's a lot more work that goes on there. That's where we really get into like themes.PowerBI.Tips and point out how to like really tweak and refine the settings that we want. But let's just say I'm going to change the settings here on this visual. So the trick I like to use here is I'd like to click on the table that I want to get the properties from. There's a couple ways of doing this. You can click the Format Painter. I think this is an underused feature of desktop. I think people should use this more. But if you click Format Painter up here, that will copy the format of that table and apply it to the table I have now. So now I can see, boom, this table now has all the properties that I had prior. So I can just copy that over. I can also copy the entire visual to another page and delete out the data and put new data, and the formatting will still stay the same. If I don't like this table style or doesn't fit the design that we're going for, I can build another sample design table. Like this is another formatted table that I want. Again, clicking the Format Painter, pasting it onto the new table. It'll then change the data on the visual of that one as well. So again, a really neat feature, saves you a ton of time. This is really, really helpful for tables. There are so many options. Conditional formatting, there's field formatting. Does it have a total row? Do you want the column headers to auto adjust in width? There's a ton of properties that go along with tables. So this is, I think, a very big time saver for getting at least one or two examples set up on how you want people to style your tables. Then lastly here, I'm going to go talk about just the text boxes. So I like having a minimum of 3 text boxes, and in the text box, I'll pre-format all the text. So this is a report page title. And then what I'll do here is this is going to be a centered object, and then I'll Control A, select all the text, and I'll adjust it so it's something big, right? And I'll set, this is a standard, right? Every report page should have this text. It should be of this font type, and it should be of this size. So we just set it, boom, done, right? This is what the report page title will look like. And then we just leave it here. That's one object that I'll just copy and paste it to other pages. Maybe I want another one for a visual header. So I may come down here and build another one. And then in this one, let's change again. Control A, visual header. And then this time I'm going to select the font size, and we're going to go something much smaller, 20. Right, so maybe this is, and maybe I want to stylize it a slightly different, right? Maybe I want to not use the Segoy UI Light, and maybe want to use bold, and then I maybe want to left justify it. So, and now that we've got this here, I want to get the height right. So this is where I would use the general tab and dial in exactly what I want. So if this is my visual header, arbitrarily I'll give it a 200 width, and then I'm going to try to dial back the height so that it's just tall enough to capture the text, but not too tall that I get a scrolly bar. So if I went to like the 30 here, you'll see I have a scroll bar on the left here. That's not ideal. You don't want that bar. It's not a good formatting option, and it's usually what you're trying to avoid. So instead, I would increase that up to, let's go like 50. And now I've got the header exactly the way I want it. And now I can just reuse this, copy and pasting this anywhere I want on the report. So when I'm pairing this with a visual, let's put a visual in the page. I may have the visual down here below, and then I'll just be able to grab, oh, here's my header. Oh, another trick I'll point out here. I find it's very helpful to use the ellipsis as a dragger or dropper or selection tool for the visual. Text boxes are notorious for clicking in the box. Now you're editing the text and not selecting the box. So if you hover over this one and click the ellipsis, you can grab and drag this a little easier, I feel like, with the ellipsis being up there in the top corner. It's kind of like a little handle you can use on the visual. So I'll copy the visual, and then I'll paste the visual somewhere else on the page. Oops, I think I copied the wrong one. Again, text boxes are a little bit hard to copy and paste. And then I'll move it over here to the visual, and then using my alignment guides, I'll just stretch this out so it matches the length of the visual here. So now I have, again, this is something I can reuse multiple times on multiple visuals. I'll talk about this later, but another really good practice is to select all the things you need and make them a group. So I do a lot of grouping. Hopefully I can select all the things I need. There we go. Select the things, and using Control G on the keyboard, Control G, makes them a single object. And now they're all bound together as a single element. So now if I stretch it, it stretches the visual, and the header stays in place there as well and stretches with the visual. So it kind of tries to keep things in place. One of the things I don't like here is as I stretch this, you notice that I'm stretching the header as well. So the header is actually getting taller. So yeah, just be aware that's going to happen. It is what it is. Oh, it's good. Yeah.
And copying. Um, is there a way to do that with interactions, like mass prevent visuals from filtering other visuals? And I think that drives at like, can we do this
Ah,
with things like bookmarks and
yes.
things like that?
So
But
the format painter does not work on bookmarks. Editing interactions, that's a good question. I don't think I've explicitly tried that. So what I'm going to do here is um, I'm going to turn, I don't think this works actually. I don't think edit interactions changes things. If I say don't do anything here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the style of this visual. So I should be able to click here, home, format painter, and then paste it to another visual. And it probably would make sense if it was a table as well, right? Let's make this a table instead, and let's grab a
you
description.
wanna you wanna share your screen?
Oh yes, sharing screen would be a big win on this one. Let me go back to my screen share.
It's one of those click here and we drag here and hey, check this one
Wow,
out.
this is
This is cool
amazing.
too.
And the report's done. Yes, we'll try that again. Okay, so now back to showing you how it works. So what I did here was I clicked on the visual, this one here, the blue table, and then I went on the format ribbon, clicking the edit interactions on the upper left-hand side of the visual. Once I edited those interactions, I turned something off. Let's turn this one off as well. Oops. Let's click on the visual again and click on, come on. It's not gonna let me because it's got two visuals too close together. Click on the visual, click on the do not do that thing, don't interact. So if I click on this, it won't adjust the table next to it, so it's going to ignore that filter context. So now what I'm going to do is with this table selected, I'll go back to the home ribbon, click Format Painter, and apply it to my main table here. And I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it did not take the edit interactions with it. So that's something that does not come with Format Painter. Format Painter, I believe, is purely for anything in the Format Paint roller. It's only here is that you're going to get that.
We would be part of a theme file,
Yeah,
right? Like the themes
correct.
or property or
Anything theme
yeah.
file related, the properties of that visual, those are the things that you're adjusting with the Format Painter. It ignores everything else. So, okay. Sorry, it did not work. All right, let's go back to the demo parts we have here. Okay, that's enough about tables and text things. Let's move on to the next element here. Let's go on to the number 8 here. So this is a visualization that Steve came up with. There's a great blog about it. Seth, I think if you maybe you can go find that on Power BI Tips. There should be, I don't remember the name of the report. Maybe Steve's got it if you're on. Go drop the link for this. This is an example of how we build tabs on a report that switches out the visual behind the scenes. So we can actually go in here and using groups of things. So that's this is the technique where I just showed you, like grouping objects together is very important because it helps keep them all together. But in this case here, we can actually group tabs together, and then as you click them, we can change the background of the color. This I think is a really good design feature around letting people know what they clicked on. So this is kind of really a cool visual element and one that we employ on almost every report now to help us switch between data types or different properties on a visual. So let's go to this one now. Let's go over to um, pre-built tabs. Okay, so this is the example I would have, right? So I would I'd figure out the example, make it stylized, make the sizes of things correct, and I would set it up so it's done. And so that way when I control click on things, clicking on tab 1 is this yellow button, and then it shows you the bar chart. And then clicking on tab 2 is red, and now it shows you a different table. So now I can then click through all the visual elements, and as I'm clicking, each one of them is changing the chart type. So this is a really good, helpful way of, as a report designer, I prefer to put visuals on the page. I don't like putting tables. I feel like it's a little bit less insightful about the information. But we all know that people really want to see tables of data. So sometimes it may make sense for us to switch between tab 1 and tab 2, where tab 2 is showing a table, but tab 1 is showing the visual that I want. So again, kind of a stylistic thing here. It may make sense to, if people really need a pie chart, I would disagree with that. But if the report requirements are, we have to have it, start with the bar chart, option 1, and you can then flip it to option 2, where you now have the ability to have it as a pie chart. So let's show you how this is built, okay? So in this one particularly, we go in here and I will open up the selection panel, and let's just make this page view the actual size because it's going to be really small. I'm going to unhide all the different elements here so you can see everything. So I'm going to start pulling this apart so you can see what's going on. I actually have a hidden slicer here that if you see. So this is part of my data model. This is a table that I made that's over here on the right hand side. It's what I would call a disassociated table. So there are no relationships between this table and anything else. It's just standalone. And whenever you select on, the table data looks like this. It's pretty straightforward. It's a simple name of the tab and an index of 1, 2, 3, or the row number of whatever that thing is. Okay. So if I go back over to the report page, what you can do here is for the single visual, and I got to give mad props to Steve Campbell on this one. This is totally his design, super well thought out, and it's just super cool how you can hide things and have them change here. So on this button, if we go here to the button, you'll see that there is a fill on it, the fill property, and then under the fill property, we've added a fill color. So if you click the effects button, you can see under here I have the rules. So the rules for this button are when the sum of index, because I only have one number, I'm going to click on one item, right? Clicking that one item changes the data points, and then that changes the value. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm selecting item number 1 on my slicer that's on the page. When I click that, it's going to change this value to 1, and then the value of 1 will be set up to Control E, we set up to have a specific color. So if the value is 1, then do this. So to show you kind of how that's working, if I change the slicer on the page, this is driving the data. As I change the slicer, it's actually changing the data that's selected on the page. And by doing that, it's actually changing the color on all the backgrounds. So for tab 2, if I click on this one, we go into the effects for this one, same thing. The rule says sum of index, if the value is 2, then it's going to be red. And so you can kind of do that with every single button, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so those numerical values are now being able to be used to then determine what color I want things to be. So if I go back here to tab 1, it'll then switch that back. So how are we doing this with bookmarks? So we're now playing with the data on the page, and we're configuring bookmarks to work with our data. So let's go back over here to the bookmarks. Modeling. Sorry, just kidding. View. And then we'll drop on the bookmarks on the page. Let's get rid of all the properties here. So now I have different properties on here. And so now I'm gonna snap a new bookmark. Let's just say we're starting from scratch. What I'll do is I will first select the tab that I want. So I'll select tab 1 after I have my formatting all set up. These are all options I can select on the page. I'll select tab 1, and then down below here I have multiple visuals. So I'll pull these apart so you can see there's 3 different visuals. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to then select the elements that I want and then hide things I don't need. So let's make tab 1 the pie chart. So I'll select tab 1. I'm going to hide the other 2 charts. So we're going to hide the tree map by clicking the eyeball, hide the bar chart, stacked bar chart, hide that one, and now I have just the donut chart, or the pie, yeah, technically it's a donut chart. Now what I want to do is, even though I have tab 1 selected, I don't want to show it. I want to hide that entire visual. So I'm going to go to the slicer and hide that as well. So even though I have data point 1 selected, I'm going to hide it away from the view of the user. Now what I can do is I need to select all the items I want to change when I hit the state of this button. So I don't care about the buttons. The buttons aren't really changing a state or anything. So I'm not going to hide or show buttons. So I'm going to ignore the buttons, but I will pick up the 4 different visuals here. Why is it making me select each one individually? Okay, there we go. So I have the slicer, the stack bar, the tree map, and the donut chart. And the reason I'm selecting those things is I'm using the slicer for its data selection, and then I'm using the visual hide or show based on the other elements. And the important thing here is this button will only affect this visual when I select these visuals. So it's important I do that. So now I'm going to grab all these items and I'm going to hit add a bookmark. Now that I have the bookmark, I'm going to adjust the properties. So I'm going to adjust the data saying this bookmark should modify data. I'll leave that checked. This bookmark should modify the display, meaning show or hide things. The current page means page navigation. So when I activate this bookmark, it goes to this page. That's a feature I don't really use very often. So I'm actually going to turn that off. So I'm going to uncheck page. And the most important step of all of this is making sure that you select the bottom one, selected visuals. So that means all the visuals that I have currently selected in my selection pane, everything this bookmark will apply to is only going to apply to just the things I selected. This is the key to making this work correctly. So if I click selected visuals, now this is tab 1. So I'm going to rename this thing by double clicking it, yellow tab. I'm going to do one more just to show you that it's working. So I now will unhide the slicer, hopefully, unhide the slicer. I will now change my slicer to tab 2, meaning I'm going to highlight object number 2. And now I will turn off the slicer again. And now I need to switch the charts below. So I'm going to hide the donut chart and now show the tree map. So this will be my selection for tab number 2. When I go here to this one, I'm going to again select the donut chart through the slicer. There, now it's working. Shift select all the items. And this is the new data that I'm going to use to support this layout of the visual. I'm going to click the add bookmark again, and then I'm going to adjust my settings, turn off current page, turn on selected visuals, like we have here. This is my list of settings. So only the visuals I'm selecting are going to be influenced, and then I'm going to rename it. And this is going to be red tab. So now when I jump between the 2 bookmarks, click on yellow tab, it'll then select the data on the slicer, which will automatically use the conditional formatting to change the background color. And then when I click on the red tab, again, it's going to hide and show visuals and then show something else. Now, why is it important to do this selected visuals thing? Let me show you. I'm going to add one more visual on the page. Let's add one more up here, a scatter chart. So let's say you have a third or a fourth visual. Let's say this visual is just there and you don't want it to be changed by the buttons. So the fact that I'm using buttons now, I can still click tab 1 and it's still showing me what's going on. Something's still changing on the report page, but I'm not changing the visual state of the data chart for the bubbles. And if I have data selected on the page with a slicer, because I have selected visuals clicked, it's not going to change the data that's inside that slicer or that bubble chart. And now here's tab 2. You can see I'm selecting a different chart, and tab 3. So I'm only changing the visual things that I selected in that list. Okay. Needless to say, I'll just kind of wrap this up with this takes a lot of work to set up. This is why the template file I think makes a lot of sense, because this example of doing all these things and creating the bookmarks and having the tabs created, you can do a lot of that prep work. One of those tables that we were talking about here was the tab table. This is a tab table that you would preload as part of the template. So you already have that table structure built. It's already working, and everything will be there available for you in the model when you're done. Okay, got really excited about that one. Let's go back over here to number 8. Okay, that's good there. We are probably right about a little 11 minutes over actually. So let me just do a wrap up here, and then we'll get to the end here. So the last two kind of tabs here are going to really talk about like how do you enhance like the speed or performance reports. We talked about building a lot of visuals. Let's make this big again. Boop 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 boop. So I'll bring up a couple other things that I want to point out. We have these things at Power BI Tips called scrims. Essentially, they're just a background for your page of your report. But the whole idea of a scrim is it's very fast. It helps you like load the report faster. It's a single image that shows up on your report. So when you're building complicated reports, instead of having a bunch of visual elements, we did a blog about this. I added 100 text boxes, so non-data driven things on the report page, and it slowed the report down by like 600% because there's a single threaded application for every single visual element you put to the page. Your browser can only render those things so quickly. So we get to the end of this and we have like hundreds of items, and it just slows the report rendering down. So taking all those visual elements and making a flat image is easier and faster. So if you want, there's a whole bunch of scrims. You can go visit PowerBI.Tips/scrims and go download some free ones. We've got a bunch of free ones that are out there for the community. There are some more paid ones. We have like I just released one that had 72 background images in a pattern here. So we have some really elaborate background images that you can go after. It makes a clean looking report. You can add shading, coloring, you can highlight different things on the report page, and I think it works really well. Another note here I'll make is you can add, and we won't have time today, maybe we'll do it in the Teams meeting after the happy hour if you want to see it, but you can actually add transparencies to your backgrounds, and then you can make your background change color based on the background page color. So you can actually make a highlighting color bleed through your visuals or your scrims, and now you can have a colored page affecting the background. So it's another kind of neat technique there as well. Another thing that we talked about earlier was this idea of a theme and a theme file. So I will bring this up because I think this is definitely worthwhile our time to look at what a demo of the theme generator looks like. So if you go to PowerBI.Tips, this is the theme generator. Oops, I don't want to save it. I wanted to zoom it, Control 1. Oh, come on. Okay, so themes.powerbi.tips, that's where you can go get your highly customized themes. So what this is a very simple JSON parser that helps you build a bunch of easy to make palettes. You can add an individual color here by clicking add to a color, and it will actually add these colors directly to the color palette on the right hand side. So this is how you define the data colors in a report. So we put some thought into that. You can rearrange them and reorder them. If you want to adjust the colors, you can click on the color itself. It highlights the color in the selector, and then you can further adjust it or tweak that color even further and then add it back to your palette and then remove the old colors. So this is primarily focused on building color palettes. If you have things that have hex codes in them, so if you have multiple hex codes of data you want, you go to a website, you find some images, you upload, have a list of hex codes, you can actually type in here, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It can be a comma separated list. I can put a comma in there, put another hashtag, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you can also do, I think you can just put a comma. We'll see how well this thing parses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you don't need the hash. You can have the hash, you don't. So this is useful when you're talking with the UI UX team. They'll provide you with a color palette. Hey, this is the color palette we want you to use. And you can just type in text or copy paste text in here. And when you hit add, it'll add all those things for you. So it'll actually generate all the individual hex codes, drop them in there, and pre-format it to you. If you want to download just the colors, you click the download theme button at the bottom, and it will automatically let you name it color palette, and it'll download that to your local machine. So it's just a JSON file that you can import into Power BI Desktop. If you want to go even further, let's say we want to style properties at a global level or a visual level, you go over to the second window here at the top called Properties. So this is where you can adjust all the properties in the window. Admittedly, there's so many properties coming out month over month. I have a hard time keeping up with all the properties, but I think for right now, this is kind of one of the most complete lists that you can find for all the properties for visuals for now. I'm continually updating this and trying making it better. So the star here is for all properties across all visuals. If you click that, it'll show you these are the things that we can change at a global level anywhere across the report. So if I want the general option to be responsive on, I tick that box and then it turns it on, and the blue indicator here tells me that this option has been set as it's turned on. If I want to adjust a property on a specific visual, so if I go to the tables visual and I want to change the title of it, I can go in here and say I want to show the title, and you can even type in the standard text you want every table to come with if you want that. So you can turn that on and you can say this is my table. And then you can do other things here. Some font sizes, you can change the font size of this thing, of the table, whatever you want here. And then once you're done, you can then click download theme, and this will be new theme, and it'll download it as a file to my desktop. So now that I have these two files, we can go back over to Power BI Desktop. We go over to, let's just show you a page here so I can show you the colors will change. I can go over here, and now I can go over to the view ribbon. Hopefully I can open that bigger. There we go. In the themes area, you can click the down arrow here on the left-hand side. Click that down, and what that'll do is it'll let you browse for additional themes. So if I browse for more themes, I can go to my desktop and say, let's grab my new theme that I just made, hit open, and assuming everything worked right, it says theme imported successfully, and now it changes all my data colors to whatever I picked in my list. And I think it should have changed the fonts on my pre-formatted tables. So if I go here to my pre-formatted tables, you can see now the text font size is much larger on those. Not super evident, but like now you have it there, and it's available now, so you can see that. So that's how you would use a theme file to help you, again, continually build out that template. The theme files are good because someone can build a report and you can just update the theme file and load that into their data, or basically load it in the report. By you loading the theme file into their report, it will update the properties. There is one caveat. When you go into the visualization here, this one that we have down here, let me ungroup this one, Control Shift G. If I go into this table visual down here at the bottom, you'll notice that there are some properties that have been preset. So if I go into the grid, I believe it is, and there's a little button here called Revert to Default. So these are the default settings that the theme file will apply. If that button is blue, let's see if I can find one here. Yeah, this one. This one is blue. When it's blue, it means something has been changed and this visual is no longer default. That section of properties are not default. So if I click revert to default, it'll change this visual back to the theme file or the default settings in Power BI Desktop. So that's a good thing to note there is you know, when you're working with these, if you adjust the properties before you apply the theme file, those properties will not change. It will show you that, hey, you've tried to adjust this thing and um, it's not adhering to your changes via the theme file. So that's basically it. That's all I wanted to chit chat about today. I think that was, let me just make sure I got all the, yeah, that's kind of the run of the mill. The only other one I had here was um, building out a custom visual. So this is a custom visual that I built where you're merging 2 or 3 different visuals together, and it's actually uh, a donut chart with some formatting, and then there's like another chart in the middle that has a number for that donut chart. So let me change the background here of this so you can see what they look like. This is background color. Let's just turn this one on, and I'll make this my ugly green color here, and then this is the background color for the big visual. I'll turn that on and then turn that one to something else. Let's go with like a grayish tone here. So I have 2 visuals that have been grouped together. And so these are 2 separate visuals that we can build together and make a pattern between the 2 visuals overlaying one on top of the other. So this is another pattern we use. We set these things up. If this was a KPI that we wanted to use over and over again, I could then build one of them and then just copy and paste them, Control C, Control V. And now I have a number of these visuals, and then all I have to do is adjust the data field parameters for what the data is showing. So it makes it easier for me to adjust those things. Okay.
For people that are newer to Power BI around layering visuals like this, there's a lot of capabilities, and that's why, um, you know, having to create application pages, for using Power BI reports is actually really fun because it stretches your imagination, and there's a ton of fun things that you can do with those layering kind of mechanisms, and that's just a great representative of that.
And I think with that, the full presentation is over. So do me a favor here, hang tight while I go get a link. Um, so Seth, actually, I'll kick it over to you while I'm doing the link thing. I'll kick it over to you. Are there any kind of final thoughts you had? I mean, I went through kind of a really fast pace here. I'll just cut it over to you and, chat through some things that you think that are relevant that we talked about, or things that maybe I missed.
Yeah, nothing missed, right? I think the overriding theme here is, when you're going to go down a route, whether it's a consistent look and feel, a consistent way in which you're going to deploy reports internally, or in my case, external client-facing reports, where a lot of the reports are designed to integrate really well with an application. The upfront work it takes to put together Power BI reports and templates and things in a consolidated way saves you just an immense amount of time downstream. And as you have to ramp up, whether that's adding more and more resources, into having other people build out reports, think about if you've built all that thing in a customized report and you know how it works, and maybe you have some cost saving features here and there, you can't easily transfer that to somebody else. So having the template built, having a theme that's applied, having and using templates or background images to reduce the some of the challenges that a newer report author may not understand, just saves you the time dividends in being able to rapidly develop reports in really complex ways, and you remain consistent.
Totally agree.
And that's one of the biggest things, that these sorts of efforts allow you to do, is have confidence that, however many reports you're building, you're not going to have the one person that, forgot to turn off headers, right? Or
Yes.
that, there's this one setting
Yes.
that was never supposed to be there, and it
It's a really
found
good
its
point.
way in because, across three tabs, with really complex reports, you might have, 50 to 100 different objects or different event or selections and hidden things. And, you throw in the data, you throw in the measures and the interactions that we have the capability to do within Power BI. And there's a lot of things to tweak, a lot of
An opportunity
properties
to go
to set.
wrong.
And yeah, well, and ultimately that's the thing, so I think if anything, we've learned that this process and using some of these techniques, Mike, that you did a great job outlining tonight, pay dividends down the road.
Awesome. So with that, we will kick it over to. It's officially happy hour time. I've got the link here, so I will zoom over to that. And I think with that, we are officially complete. I will cut the audio. I'm going to hang out here for just a couple more minutes. I'll probably throw on the end screen as well. So this is the link to the Teams meeting. Feel free to join that link. And I'm going to hang out here in the stream because apparently if a chat window shuts down too quickly, the link will disappear. So for those of you who want to join us and just kind of talk with Seth and myself, and this is not going to be recorded, it's just going to be us in the Teams meeting, feel free to hit that link, join our Teams meeting, and then we will be able to let you in, and we'll just kind of chit chat candidly and talk about the user group and any questions you have, or again, we play like Stump the Chump. There, if you want to check out other things or talk to us about other stuff, you're feel free to. So thank you very much for attending. I hope this was a valuable add to you and your day and helping you learn a couple new tricks, and we'll see you soon. And if not, next month. Thank you very much. Yeah, you can go ahead and let him in.